Hello. Today I'm going to talk about EOS, which is supposedly based upon a high-performance delegated proof of stake platform. Thanks to CoinMarketCap for that description. You should really focus on the fundamentals of this coin if you want to trade it. Like any other asset, those fundamentals are critical. For the purposes of my analysis, though, I am only going to be looking at price action, not the fundamentals. I believe the technicals show clearly what needs to be considered for investing in this asset. The fundamentals play an important role for whether or not you should even be involved in trading the asset. But the actual trading process should be strictly mathematical and scientific. And as always, I'm going to context this forecast strictly and solely on the basis of automated trading. As I've said before, manual trading has a different mindset and a different process. Automated trading or machine trading has a completely unique perspective in that once you pick your approach, the machine simply mechanically carries it out. So you are looking at my forecasting tool. It's gone through a few revisions since the last time I've used it on video. But as you can see, it looks pretty robust comparatively speaking. I don't use a complete spread of high to zero. I use only the highest high to the lowest low based upon what price action has actually been. There is a reason for that, both for grid trading and for price analysis, along with any kind of a specialized indicator such as MACD or RSI or whatever your favorite flavor may be. The theory behind price boundary is very simple. You want to emphasize on price areas that tend to be repetitive over price areas that don't see much traffic. So if you think of each of these grids as an order, the grid lines where price goes over more frequently should have higher position sizes than the grid lines where price doesn't exceed that often. Or from the standpoint of this image on the screen, this chart, your emphasis should be more on the lower region of the chart versus the upper region to maximize your profitability. So for example, this grid line down here at the bottom would be more probabilistically advantageous to have a higher position size than the grid line way up top. In essence, you are using weighted purchasing to try to capitalize on where price has been historically. There are always risks with it in that price may never return to that historical low or historical high, which is why a tool like this helps you see exactly where the price has been throughout its entire history. Now, as you can see on the right-hand side of the chart, you have the forecast maximum. The red line is the forecast minimum. You have the weekly, hourly, daily, and the 4-hour moving averages. So let's really start to take this asset apart and analyze it in terms of whether or not it is something that should be considered. First thing I want to do is I want to make price action a little more visible. Okay, now that we can see the price really well in correlation with the range of motion of the price. If you remember that the mean of the price, or the average between the highest and the lowest, should always be the center point, or the rough area that price should within reason fluctuate around for a healthy market. The two yellow bars around the mean are in essence within that standard deviation for the purposes of this generalization. Volume weighted price and volatility, along with average true range, would fluctuate within this range on a healthy asset reasonably consistently. And that is important because this particular asset brings that into question, as we're going to see as we scroll through its history. Okay, back here in May of 21, it hit its largest or highest point for the most recent cycle. But we're not all the way up to the highest point of its history, so let's find that. Okay, we can see that this asset really has a very weak market. And I say that in context to the price action itself. And it's broken new lows quite frequently. Okay, let's zoom this in. It reached its all-time high pretty much very shortly after its inception. And it never really regained that momentum. Okay, let's go all the way back to the inception. Okay, there it is. The very first candle. And you can see the grid forming. It made newer lows pretty much the day after it was made. So, the high. Okay, here we made a new high. We actually did some strong growth. That's good. That shows reasonable strength of the market. And it shows that price is gravitating back down to the median within the reasonable standard deviation, crosses the median, and then starts climbing back up. So far, a very healthy market. It stays relatively close to the median, comparatively speaking. That's a good sign for the market. Climbs a little bit, drops back down and corrects, and then it takes a huge, massive correction. This is the sign of a problem. It actually hits a new all-time low. This coin, up to this point, didn't show the need for an extreme correction. and that's what this would be considered. This is roughly 50% of the trading volume of the coin for this correction. That's extreme. That is very extreme. And that's something that needs to really be looked at. That's a consideration that needs to be focused on. And here, it breaks the new low again and again and again. So it's not really showing good strength even from the beginning of its onset. Now let's really zoom out, and it's breaking new lows again and new lows again and again. And this is all within a relatively short time of its inception. That needs to be a warning flag for a beginner wanting to get into this project. This is not a coin I would recommend for a beginner simply because, as you can see, back here, it broke above the median, but ever since then, it's been breaking below the median with newer lows. And you can see from the standpoint of the market, it's not done. It's still making newer lows. Okay, it finally settles at this point back here around December of 18. And it begins to make a slow, reasonably nice uptrend. Not too fast, not too slow. It's not overly aggressive, and that's good. That gives this coin some hope that maybe it was just finding its equilibrium within the market. But then it just barely touches its median. It doesn't break its median. And then it starts going down again. For the level of corrections that this asset just went through, this should have broken the median, at least reasonably equal to the downward correction. Right here shows there's nobody willing to buy the coin. If you look at the median as an equilibrium point of balance between buyers and sellers, when the price is below the median, there's too many sellers and not enough buyers. When the price is above the median, there's too many buyers and not enough sellers. This coin didn't have the market. People didn't want to buy it. Plenty of sellers, and I suspect the sellers were the ones that bought in up here. And they bought in heavy, thinking that this particular asset was just going to take off and flourish. But as time went on, they realized it's not simply going to take off and flourish. So only basically May of 19, it reached a point where the buyers and the sellers were actually equal. But then it started to drop again in the market, and there were more sellers than buyers. A good possibility to pick up positions and really capitalize on a strong fundamental coin. Except this asset, this coin, is not strong fundamentally. If it was, you should see more activity around the median. It spends too much time significantly below the standard deviation of the median to reflect volume and volatility of a healthy supply and demand chain. This market just does not represent that type of a good, stable process. And you can see yet again, it goes back down to close to its lowest low prices. Now 2020 did bring some early upticks, but then it corrected again. And on top of correcting, it hit a new all-time low. It lost even more value than what it had already lost. And it stayed within that new low for quite a while before it started actually showing an uptick. And even then, it's still 20% of its maximum price action at this point, roughly around the 17th of August, 16th of August. And this is 2020. So from its inception up to now, it's only really been above the median once. Okay, we keep going. Another little uptick, another little uptick, a strong uptick, bit of a correction, and finally we hit the median. But then we have a correction, then we really show promise. We actually get close to its all-time high. This is where the coin actually began to show merit. It began to show a reasonable level of a healthy market. Correction, climb, correction, climb. And then it began dropping again. At this point, something you would expect after this type of an accelerated climb. Because right here, this is quite a significant accelerated climb. This did well here. But of course, the stronger the climb, the stronger the correction. So nothing out of surprise at this point within this short time frame. But then it goes back down, corrects, picks up a little bit, gets back up into the standard deviation of the median, and then begins dropping right back down to the 20% range of price maximization. Picks up, gets a little bit higher, remains stable for a little bit between the 30 to 40% range. Then it drops back down to the 20. So right here we have a little bit of market consistency. This is good. This shows that the coin is at least having some consistency within the market. Maybe a new normalization or neutralization of price. But then it drops back down again to the 20% range. Then it starts dipping back down to the 10% range. And ultimately it gets close to the all-time low at this point. But then it just does set an all-time low. It breaks its low and goes lower. And as we continue, it sets another low. And now it's finally close to where we are today, showing some market climb above the all-time low. But when you look at this coin from inception to now, this asset is weak. It doesn't remain around its median for a reasonable period of time. And I'm going to define reasonable between 40 to 50%. That should either be above or below within that two boundary area that I demonstrated. For price action, volume weighted, and volatility movement. This is where I would expect to see this coin at least 40 to 50% of the time, realistically. And when you look at other assets like Bitcoin, Ethereum, ADA, LTC, XRP, you see a reasonable level of standard consistency around the median that fluctuate between its all-time high and its all-time low. Now that being said, there are opportunities on this coin. But I don't believe those opportunities are the best for beginners and intermediates. I think this coin is really an expert coin for trading. You need to really understand market flow to catch these particular kinds of coins. This is a kind of coin that I would strictly leave as a pure, organic, trend following coin that follows the ebb and flow of the market directly, and not something that I would trade without being able to long or short based upon that flow. This is not a one-sided coin for a spot market. It spends too much time going downward for that to happen. And that really is a very big problem within this coin's metrics. The forecast for this coin shows it continuing to drop. There's just too much evidence historically that shows that the little bit for the last 2.5 months of an uptick isn't enough to warrant this coin to be in a bullish state. Because we can look back historically and see how many times this has occurred within a reasonable period to determine that coin is simply too weak to consider bullish. At this point, I think it's best to say the coin is in an indecisive state or in a neutral state. It's too early to really predict whether or not it's going to truly go back to its median. Now, does this coin have opportunities? Yes, it does. It has a lot of opportunities. For example, if we go down to the 5-minute chart and we look at it, this is really the perfect range for a graded bot or a limited amount of trading that is opportunistic. As you can see from the chart, this is within the lower 10% of its price boundary spread between its highest high and its lowest low. So if we hide the forecaster for a moment and you see this process, you can see from the right hand side that there are good opportunities with the right fee structure. And that really is the critical point of trading this coin. Your fee structure must be extremely minimal to maximize your profits, because the coin itself has a very light price movement probability. For example, 1.3 to roughly a peak of 1.8. That's only a 50-cent price movement. That's not very much. Not for the history of this coin. So it's reasonable to stay focused on whether or not this coin is really worth investing when you look at its whole history and you see the long-term trend. The long-term trend, weekly and daily, are still trending downwards. Really, for this coin to be in a good opportunity to purchase, the weekly needs to be either level or beginning to slowly taper upwards. And I don't think this coin is going to have that for a while. If we go back historically and we focus only on the weekly line, well, it actually isn't that old to have weekly data. And that could be a problem as well in part of the analysis. So basically, we're going to end up having to decide overall on daily, 4-hour, and 1-hour. And even the daily doesn't look all that strong. But it does show starting from here all the way up to here. Well, that actually shows going to here if you use price action crossing below daily as your trigger point. But quite frankly, I personally think I would have gotten out of it as soon as it hit the median. And I think that would have been a reasonable, rational profit basis. This is a coin that would have very quickly turned into a regret if you were holding it and you didn't sell at a reasonable point of profit. It has not returned to that profit level at all. And if you look at its history, really being close to its all-time high throughout the entire history of this asset has only happened once, maybe. One time since its inception, it's been close to its all-time high. And that puts this coin right now, let's see, 18. This coin is 4 years old, 3.5 years old. And it's only been close to its all-time high twice. That is a fundamentally weak coin. That is a fundamental problem in price action. And that is an asset that really has some underlying issues. I personally would not recommend this coin because of that. As you progress through the different time frames and you see how this coin reacts, it becomes clear. This may not be a strong choice for your portfolio. If you're looking for a coin that best fits a short-only strategy, this might be it, since 90% of the time, based upon this charting information, I should say roughly 90%, it looks like it's been a downtrending coin. It doesn't meet the merits that fit really the market expectations that an asset should, for the longer term analysis, always look to be moving upwards as a whole. This coin is doing just the exact opposite. The longer term analysis shows it's just getting weaker and worse in price action. So my forecast for this coin, in my opinion, it's going to continue to lose value. Eventually, I expect it to simply be delisted because it just does not have strong technicals backing it. I would not recommend investing in this coin because of the factors of a very simple price action forecast analysis. If the coin hovered more around the standard deviation of the median, then my answer would probably be a little bit different, meaning yes, it might be alright as long as you had a carefully thought out strategy. But given the way this coin has trended over the 4 years of its inception, I just can't say that. I cannot reasonably say this product is viable for investing. So, hopefully you found this analysis helpful in your own decision making. Let me know in the comments. What do you think of this asset? Do you think its fundamentals justify waiting it out? Or do you think that it is simply in trouble and just a slow dying process that really needs to happen quicker? Until next time.